Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome to my 3 Takeaways episode from the Laura Stewart interview that I just posted this past Monday. I hope you guys really enjoyed all the stories and insight that Laura had. I absolutely loved the story that she talks about in regards to that investment property that they had that was a student housing piece of property, and essentially, so she's a real estate agent, and essentially they were trying to get new investors into this big property, and they were doing this event to go show people the property, give them lunch, show them a good time, and all that kind of thing, and they talked to everybody the day before, and everybody was coming. There was going to be about 75 people, so a total of like kind of 35 to 40 couples, if you will. So kind of potential investors, and they were really excited about it. They got a bus. They had all the meals ready, super excited. And then the next day, 4 people showed up. And it was just a huge learning lesson from them. And she tells a story, what their learning lessons were, how they rebounded from that moving forward. And I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get into the takeaways. But point being, she had some great insights and some great stories, and you guys need to make sure that you listen to it if you have not listened to it yet. Now, before I get into the 3 takeaways, I want to make sure you guys are subscribing to my 111 newsletter, the Monday Motivation Trio, because you'll get 1 motivational quote, 1 inspiring video, and 1 badass workout in your inbox every single Monday morning to make sure you have an awesome Monday, set yourself up for success the rest of the week, build momentum, and have a killer week. So just go to nickcarrier.com/111-newsletter. Again, nickcarrier.com/111-newsletter. Without further ado, let's get right into my 3 takeaways. Number 1 is just get started. And this because she talks about the importance of her jumping into her real estate career. Now, before she jumped into real estate, she kind of had a 10-year career where she was just bouncing around from a lot of different industries. She worked in fashion a little bit. She did some help with some mental health patients and different things like that. She literally bounced around so much until about 5 years ago when she made the jump into real estate. And she had a little bit of a buffer or a little bit of exposure into real estate because her husband had been in real estate for a while. So she got her license, but then she just kind of jumped into it. And she stressed the importance of jumping into it and learning on the job, because I think a lot of us think that we need to know all the answers before we go into something new. And we have this analysis paralysis because we're like, okay, what about this? What if this happens? What if this happens? And we think we need to know the answers before the question even arises, right? And I think the biggest thing that I've learned is I don't know the questions that need to be asked until I start. Or I don't know the answers that, and if I don't know the questions that are going to be asked, then I can only find out the answers if I get started. So you have to learn on the job, so don't be afraid to go into a new situation. Takeaway number 2 is do the hard stuff now. This was kind of a theme of the episode. She talks about how she practices that every single day. She wakes up early, she works out in the morning, gets that hard thing done right away. She also talks about the importance of following up with people, like get in touch with people on the front end and follow up, because you never know when it's going to come back and return on the back end. And that's just it's a life principle. The importance of doing the hard stuff now, investing time early, delayed gratification. Because think about with money, if you're trying to build wealth, what do you need to do? You need to invest money early on, because if the earlier you invest, the more time that money has to compound. The more you have good habits early on, the more those good habits can compound on themselves, and you are a better version of yourself later on. And it's super simple thing that I do every single day in terms of like doing the hard stuff now that pays off a little bit later on. This is kind of a silly example, but like I schedule my coffee maker the night before. And if I schedule the coffee maker the night before, like I do it's not hard, right? But it's a little bit of work. I do the hard stuff then. That way I don't have to do it in the morning, and I set myself up for success. So that way I don't have to waste my energy in the mornings making my coffee, right? It's already made, and I can use all the other energy to actually getting my work done. So do the hard stuff early on so it sets you up for success later. And then takeaway number 3 is spend the time looking at your failures. So hard. It's so hard to do this. It's so much easier said than done to be able to actually take the time, sit down, and evaluate why something went bad. Kobe Bryant talks about the importance of this. He watched every single game he ever played. The next day, he watched every single game he ever played, whether or not he won, whether or not he lost. He sat down, broke the game down, and figured out what he could do better moving forward. And she talks about how when they had the story that I talked about right in the beginning, when they had only 4 people show up to this event, and they were expecting 70 people to show up, 70 potential investors into this property, and they only had 4 people show up. They could have so easily the next day, the next week been like, let's forget about it, let's move on, and let's just move forward from here. But no, they sat down and really had a meeting and evaluated, okay, why did this not go well? what happened? Did we not reach out the right way? And they realized like, okay, well, first off, this was in the middle of winter in Canada, so it was super cold. It was on a weekend, so that probably wasn't good. We didn't maybe reach out to the right people, so that wasn't good. And so they made all these little improvements so that it didn't happen moving forward. And their team went to first in the country at the end of that next year. And she talks about the importance of spending time looking at your failure. She talks about the importance of self-reflection. She talked about how after the podcast, she was probably going to take the time to self-reflect. Okay, what did I do wrong? What did I say that I liked? What did I say that I didn't like? What do I need to do a little bit differently moving forward? And it's not in a way that's like, why did you do this? Why did you do that? It's not critical of yourself. It's curious of yourself as to, okay, what could I have done better? So spending the time looking at your failures is easier said than done, but it is really important to get done. So again, guys, my 3 takeaways. Number 1 is just get started. Be willing to learn on the job or learn into a new situation. Don't feel like you have to hold yourself back from getting started because you don't have all the answers. Takeaway number 2 was do the hard stuff now. Invest early on so that those early on good habits have time to compound on themselves and give you a greater return in the future. And then takeaway number 3 was spend the time looking at your failure. It's tough. Like watching my old podcasts from the past, it's tough. Sometimes I don't want to do it. Sometimes I'm like, ah, screw it. I don't want to look at it. But it's really important to take the time and look at it, learn from it, and adjust moving forward. I hope you guys enjoyed these 3 takeaways. I hope you enjoyed the Laura Stewart interview. If you didn't listen to it, you got to go back and listen to it. That story with the investment property is one of the best stories that I've had on the podcast. And it was really meaningful to me because I could hear the emotion in her when she was recounting the story. I almost felt like she was about to tear up. I was like, oh my gosh, maybe I shouldn't have brought up the story. I feel like she was almost going to tear up telling the story because it was such an emotional thing for them, and you could tell how much of an impact it had on them. But she was like, I don't know if we could have had the success that we had. She literally said, I have a quote right here, that loss was a catalyst to a lot of change around here. So that was really important. But if you guys enjoyed this episode, make sure you leave it a rating and review. Make sure you're subscribing to the show so you don't miss any of the interviews, you don't miss any of the takeaways, you don't miss any of the Fitness Goal Fridays, because these are the things that every single week are going to get you closer and closer to your best you.